The FBI has a new warning about credential stuffing.
So, Karen, you've got a story relating to credential stuffing and financial institutions. What can you tell us?
Yeah, well, the FBI just put out this alert about credential stuffing. I don't think that's anything completely new, but what's been happening with greater frequency, according to this report, is that because of all these millions and millions of credentials that are out there in databases, that hackers are taking these and just applying them against normally they'd be looking at the companies that they were stolen from to see if they could be used, but they're just assuming that people are using those same passwords over and over again and just kind of cramming them into these financial institutions and seeing what they can open up. And obviously they are successful because we know that people are not always so good at their password hygiene. We've talked about that many times on ThreatTraq. The thing that's interesting here, I thought, was that they've been doing this, for me, is they said that they're doing this in some cases so much on these login servers that they actually look like they're DDoS attacks. So they're just cramming so many credentials in there that the companies aren't even aware that really what they're trying to do is these credential stuffing attacks because they're treating them like they're DDoS attacks in a couple of cases. And that the other thing that's happening is that they're using them against APIs because APIs frequently don't have two-factor authentication. I think most banks, hopefully all the viewers who watch ThreatTraq have already implemented two-factor authentication. If the banks haven't required it, most of them at least offer it. But on a lot of these APIs, they aren't, that's not required. So again, that's another place where this is happening. And so we're just seeing again, I would say just a variant of this, and that in some cases, some of the losses have been, somewhat sizable, and it's just was the FBI out there alerting the financial institutions more broadly that they really needed to take these precautions, and this was happening, as you can imagine, at some of the smaller, not the biggest institutions, but some of the smaller ones that were medium sized, that this was happening. They were estimating in some cases that there were 50,000 accounts that were compromised, which is a fairly large number. As you can imagine, the FBI also put out there, some of your standard mitigations, which are, change your passwords, don't use the same ones twice, but also for the institutions themselves to kind of step up their own monitoring. We talked about that in your story, Matt, as well, that, that you need to have some better monitoring to see this so that, in this case of having it look DDoS attack, that you can obviously be able to differentiate, for instance, between those things, which shouldn't be too hard to figure out. So, again, just an important message out there and from the FBI. So I wanted to bring it here.
Yeah, you mentioned that the APIs don't have two-factor authentication, and I've come across that a couple of times, and it just seems like such a crazy thing that you spend all this time making it so that the user interface requires two-factor authentication for a normal user logging in, and then you just build another version of it that doesn't have that. I do honestly wonder, and maybe somebody can correct me or tell me why this wouldn't make sense. The APIs that I've seen a lot are because you've got a mobile app, right? You've got something that it makes more sense to give people access to the app instead of the website. Couldn't you build some code into the app that allows it to have its own second factor of generating like a token code or something that changes every 60 seconds? The same way that you would have with an SMS code or like an RSA or other time-based OTP. Is there not a reason that you could just do that? Include it in the app?
Well, hopefully one of our viewers could say yes,
Mhm.
but I think so. I don't see why that's not possible. Certainly some APIs are protected, so I don't see why that wouldn't be possible. Seems
Okay.
like a very logical thing to code into those actions.
Yeah, even the fact that they're able to utilize an API, and it sounds like, if, like you're saying, Matt, like the software, the app is using the API in the background, right, to make the request from the bank. They're obviously not using the app, right? So they're using another method. They're running some kind of a script. There should be a way for them to pick up the fact that the request is not coming from like the standard UI.
Oh,
There's
sure.
got to be some kind of a string, right, that differentiates a request from a command prompt, from a script,
Well,
or
we would call it,
from the
if it was an
interface.
HTTP API, we'd call that the user agent string. But
There you go. Right.
there's
So,
nothing proving
well,
the user agent string isn't being faked anyway. Like,
there you
it's
go.
pretty
Yeah.
change. So like at that point, you don't trust the client at all. You just have to trust that they have the authentication credentials that you're requiring, which is where I think like a
Yeah.
second factor,
Would
not
be
even a second factor, but like a rotating code or some sort of time-based something
time-based.
should be present in the API.
Yeah.
Who knows? I'm
Yeah.
hoping somebody in the comments can enlighten me as to why this would or wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So,
Yeah.
so what would you say people, just regular viewers, should do about this situation?
Well, certainly, I feel like we're kind of a broken record here, but obviously you don't use your same credentials on multiple accounts, right? And also you should change them regularly. There are examples of this for individuals that they're the ones who had money stolen or issues with their accounts. So I mean this isn't I don't want to make it sound like millions and millions of dollars have been stolen using this, but it is interesting because they're obviously getting much more adept at using the same trove of credentials and attempting it in many, many, many more institutions to see what they can find. And so clearly if you're using the same password and over and over and over again, your risk is that much higher. So I think from a consumer perspective, that's probably the best advice. But they are also warning the institutions themselves that they have to pay more attention to this, and it should be fairly easy to monitor and be aware of.